Hi, I'm Jim,
And I'm Hisham, and this is
the Constantly Leaping Podcast.
yes. And just to a little bit to tell our audiences. I mean, like we are getting a lot of comments about the podcast. A lot of people are loving it, but they're accusing us of being too serious. Uh,
Yes,
and
that's
well, I
true.
Well, I guess we are being a little bit serious because we're talking about very important topics, but
Yes.
Jim and I has decided to do some heart light episode, a light-hearted episode. Okay, light-hearted episode in the future. So we'll let you know when that's gonna happen. Probably
Yeah.
after this pandemic goes away, and we can celebrate this with something happy. But today's why I wanted to say that because today's topic is a really heavy topic, and it is serious to everybody. It's about climate change. It's something that surfaced, uh, you know, probably mostly like the past 2 or 3 decades, but the last few years it was like really high in media, and it's becoming like in many parts of the world, in many in many times of the year, or many when a political event happens, it becomes like the front page news for that matter. And when this pandemic happened, yes, it is also now kind of like a front page news from time to time. So we wouldn't talk about climate change today, and we are, as you know, we always cut into 4 topics. So our let's start with our first topic is what is actually is climate change. Um, and a lot of people say is like, okay, you know what? Climate change is happening since the birth of this planet. The Earth's climate have changed many times. You cannot even count them. We can just guess some of them. The major climate change events that happened through like 4 billion years, which are the or 4.5 billion years, which is the age of this planet. Yeah, well, the thing about it is like, yes, it's been happening, but there's a difference between natural happening climate change, which is going to happen forever, or at least as long as this planet is alive. But there's also the human affected climate change, and the big difference is like the natural climate change happens over hundreds of thousands of years to sometimes millions of years. We've seen the Ice Age. We've seen you know there was a time where the Arabian Sahara was actually fully green kind of thing, and now we see it all desert, and that happened like a couple of hundred thousands of years ago or something like that. I mean, there's always approximately things about it, but the thing is why it surfaced, and it didn't surface, by the way, or the talk didn't start like a couple of decades ago. It started like about a century ago. There are a lot of articles, and the people who wanted to look, there's a lot of resources on YouTube and on archives or archive websites or other things. There's a talk about that for more than a century ago, and I think that people started to notice that specifically when the industrial human era started, like in the 18th century and the 19th century, and all the way down here. It is happening, and there's huge evidence that human interaction, the emissions that we do, is affecting climate change, or at least it's making it rapidly going on. But of course, there are people who are denying, which is going to be another topic. But climate change is happening naturally or are humanly affected, and it's not happening by now. So I wanted to leave it to you, Jim, to tell us, because you also have read about that recently. So I'll tell us what do you think about it?
Yeah. So again, thanks for the opening there to give people a little bit of of a big thing. So I love to read. I don't know if our audience already knows this, but I'm a big reader. So recently, the universe has given me a couple of books here. One is called Environmental Challenges and Opportunities: Local Global Perspectives on Canadian Issues by Christopher D. Gore and Peter J. Stowett. So this one right here, I've said it verbally so people can hear me. And the other one is called Cool It: The Skeptical Environmentalist's Guide to Global Warming by Bjorn Lomborg. And that's it right there. And for me, the quick story I'll share is here just for a few minutes. Is climate change is real, but I have to tell you, when I was younger, in the 70s and 80s, I don't remember, hearing about climate change or, noticing anything. It wasn't until in the 2000s I was working for a logistics company. So I worked a lot indoors, but sometimes I would work outdoors, and I'd be outdoors a lot, fair amounts. And we had some scorching summers here in Toronto. I mean, it was hot, like 35, 40, and you could feel it. And people were like complaining, and then people complain about winter. And then the last, politicians who've spoken about this. We're not going to name names. And there's theatrical movies that have come out that have glamorized climate change. I went to a climate change for my first time in my life protest last year, April, called Climate Strike, that happened here at Queen's Park. And it's the only second protest I've been in my life. Okay. The first one was for bike lanes here in Toronto. So, personally, I got rid of my car in 2016. So at that time, I realized, okay, I didn't need it. So in 5 years, I've reduced my footprint. I cycle, I walk, I take whatever I can. I do stuff all over Ontario here. Now, I'm not giving my personal situation, and just to give people a little bit of a framework. But every bit counts. But the goal of why we're doing this heavy topic is, I believe that it has to be discussed. We've spoken about mental health and other topics here the first 6 episodes. So I think it's important that we talk about this, and that's why I read about it, and there's some good information here I'll try and share. So I appreciate what Hisham says, because this has been around a long time. But it seems like the last 10, 15 years, 20 years, it's become, an issue that's been politicized, and also in environmentalism also has taken part. So I'll throw it back to you, Hisham.
Yeah, and I just want to tell people that the first talk about that was by a scientist called Joseph Fourier. That was in 1824. But the thing is, he wasn't looking at the climate change as a climate. He was looking at the Earth's atmosphere and how the planet gets warm, because planets are living in a vacuum. The space is a vacuum, and the space is really cold. When you go outside the space, it's really cold. It's freezing. So how the Earth is getting warm, and he was studying on how the atmosphere around us is doing that. But during this study, and that's 1824, he actually realized and gave the suggestion that the human interactions within the industry and all of this thing actually could or actually are already affecting climate change. So the conversation hasn't started. I mean, like the way that people are talking about it nowadays is that they're making it look like, oh, it's something recent, or as a lot of people say, it's a Chinese hoax, or no, it's something that is made by big corporations or something like that to make more. That's 1824. That's when these things started. At that time, none of that was here. So that was, and actually, he didn't do a study about climate change. He was just doing a study about the how the Earth it keeps its warm in the vast space where it's cold and all. And during his study, how science is, you do a study of something and then you discover a chain of other things. So he discovered that, and that's 1824. So for that's first fact, and of course everybody can check that. There's a large article about that on Wikipedia and other sources. about this thing, and Fourier's findings. They're all over the internet. You can read about them. You can find them, and for our YouTube viewers, I want to just show a little bit. I can share the screen on this on a chart. You know, it's dramatically showing how the Earth temperature went from 1880 to 2020. I mean, these are facts. These are not politicized or anything. These are the temperature anomalies, and of course, you can all of those facts are there on the internet, and you can check them out. You can check the timeline. There are some websites that give you the timeline on how they change. And I hear a lot of people here uh, in Canada and in a lot of places who are saying like it wasn't like this 20 years ago.
Yeah,
The
it's
weather
true.
was not like that. I mean, like
Yeah,
you're living here for a long time. I mean, I came in
yeah,
2005, but even since 2005, there are changes. I mean,
yeah.
I'm noticing changes. So
It's
you know,
obvious.
exactly. And like as I said, last year we've seen this, or last year or the year before, I don't remember. Do you remember that huge vortex where when the
Yes,
snow came in, and at the
yes,
same time we had one of the hottest summers? These things
yes.
usually were happening once one of them happens, like a colder winter, and it happens like every 10, 20, 30 years. And then you have the hottest, after a couple of years, you'll have a hottest summer in 20, 30 years. But they too happened in 1 year at the same time. And you know I'll just tell people, if you're not being skeptic about why is this happening, then you might need to open your eyes a little bit and read more and see more, because again, I've noticed changes since I came in here in 2005. So I believe everybody who lived here or in any other part have noticed that. But you know which is going to lead this thing is going to lead me to the next topic. Is I think there's a huge traction on media between climate change believers and
Yeah.
deniers, and
Hmm.
the denying factors, or the people, or the climate change deniers, are growing huge. I mean, maybe there are less numbers, by the way, which according to
Hmm.
statistics, but they're voicing out too much, and a lot of people who are not on any side are being skeptic, are being lost between the information. And I think this is highly politicized.
Yeah.
Like I leave it to you, because I know that you have an opinion about that.
Hmm.
But media is doing a lot of misleading information nowadays, right?
Yeah, and this is something that I have kind of been more kind of watching. I would say the last couple of years, for many different reasons. Obviously, I'm not driving as much now and all that. So on a personal level, I've noticed it, but on a professional level, it's kind of interesting to see all this. And for me, it was a little. I didn't understand it. I didn't understand how um, they can have that viewpoint. But I quickly realized that I have seen I've traveled across Ontario. I've run through an ice storm. We had an ice storm here. We've had crazy weather, windstorms here in Toronto. I've personally lived through some of it. I just got, a few weeks ago, I was on a walk here in my neighborhood, and big, a big air gust literally pushed me onto the street, almost on the street. I felt so uncomfortable. I know it sounds like a little thing, but it happens. So, as far as the media, I think that a number of factors. I think that it's been politicized. There's no doubt. We're not going to name names. That is not what this is all about. But I think it's the topic has been politicized, and I think that doesn't help. There's a lot of people around the world who are taking this seriously, and a lot of the Kyoto call. There's the Copenhagen conference. There's a lot of things that have happened on the political realm, and many countries have pulled out from certain accords. We're not going to name, but not that hard to find out online. But the reason I mention is I think that it's almost like that they have the entitlement to do so. and we're talking about this show a few days ago, and I was a little uncomfortable to talk about this because I didn't want people to sort of attack us and saying we're wrong. And if you listen to us here on the show, it's not about saying right or wrong. It's almost we're saying some facts here. These are facts, and I think that that's what it is. Yes, have I gone to a climate change event? I did. Am I allowed to do so? Yes, it was my democratic right. And there was a lot of people there. I was surprised. I mean, it was thousands and thousands of people were there. But I think that the reason we chose this topic today is that we have to put things on the table at the end of the day. And this is not something that just showed up 10 years ago. This has been here since 1824. People talk about it. But I think the last 4 or 5 years for me, I've heard more, read more. Look, I read 2 books, Environmental Challenges and Opportunities, and Cool It. The people are writing about it, and they're very detailed about CO2. There's about all sorts of information. There's a lot of big words in here. I don't know what they mean. But by the way, just to let you know, especially the Challenges and Opportunities environmental book by Christopher D. Gore and Peter J. Stowett. I mean, there's some serious language in this book. But I appreciate hope you appreciate what we're trying to say here. And this is why we decided to include this in the topic. So I'll throw it back to you, Ishan.
Yeah, and I just want to see that if for people who wants to look into, are still skeptic, just go and see like the satellite images for the North Pole or the South Pole, and see how the glacier retreated during that just the last 10 years since we started taking photos of the Earth.
Yes.
From a lot like Google Earth or any other product. I don't want to promote product, but there are satellite images and they are there.
There is.
And there's an archive of satellite. Yeah, I know. And you remember those this Facebook or social media challenge that showing you 10 years and your face, your photo now. And there are a lot of climate change activists who were showing 10 years. You're showing the North Pole or the glaciers, like 10 years and now, and the size is and we look at it and it's there. These are images. I mean, like I always tell people, I mean, people might lie, but numbers don't. If you look at the numbers and you look at the size of the glaciers and the size of even the sea levels, how the sea levels are getting up. I mean, like people in cities like New York, even here in Toronto, we Lake Ontario and the oceans, we see that. We see that in our daily life. And I know that most people, a lot of people are living in inside cities. They don't live on shores or something like that. But people like us who live by waters, we see that. Yes. I mean, like we feel that it is not something that we can deny anymore or say like whether it's caused by a climate change. If they wanted for the deniers, they say like it might be, but it's happening and the sea levels are rising and there's a cause for that. So why don't you just give like a chance saying like this might be cause for a climate change and you go and look at it. The images were scary when I saw the glaciers and it's going down, right? I mean, like you were also, I mean, like you were born here in Toronto, right? And so you've noticed this, like you were telling me that day about the amount of rain and the thing that was happening and how is it now happening, right?
Yeah, the temperature. In Toronto we have 4 seasons. And not many places in the world have as stark seasons as we do. Listen, it snowed in May. Okay, we're in May 16th. It snowed earlier this month. Okay, it has never snowed in May that I remember. Okay, it has snowed in April, but not in May. We've had when Katrina hit, when Hurricane Katrina hit. I actually did an event here in Toronto that night. And I remember the rain coming down. I was like, what am I doing going to this event? It was coming down. And I do a lot of cycling here in Toronto, and I've been hit with some rain. And we're talking hard rain. I mean, I was hurting. I mean, it hurt, and I had to stop over and get cover. So the reality is that it is happening, and I urge people listening there's facts. It is. There is some facts. There is images. that's all we're saying. We're not, it is what it is. So I think that I've noticed it. I think that it's apparent that sea levels here in the Ontario region, weather the weather forecasters always talk about the up and down of the water at Niagara Falls, at the
Mhm.
reservoirs here in the Ontario region. Okay, and so they used to talk about that stuff before. So that's part of the conversation now. And as far as the glaciers, there's a couple of movies made that touched upon that indirectly, called March of the Penguins, and they talked about a little bit about the penguins' journey, but they also talked about the diminishing of the glaciers in the film. It
Yeah.
was not much of the film, but a little bit of the film. So that is happening. So you may see pictures of one glacier fall, but that glacier is a big piece. But enough big pieces falls, that makes a difference.
Yeah.
So again, the environmental things are happening, and I've seen those images of the Northern Pole over the past, say, 8 years, and it's stark to see that.
Yeah.
So it's real, and I think that we're just pointing in the direction of there's information is real out there,
Yeah.
and we'll go from there. So I'll throw it back to you, Hisham.
Yeah, and I just want to remind people, specifically here in Canada, that I think last year or the year before, we had a cyclone in Ottawa.
Yes.
Ottawa is not a city on the sea; it's an internal city.
Yeah.
60 houses were
Yes.
were brought down.
That's right. That's right. I forgot about
One
that.
of one of my friends who lives in Ottawa, his thank God his house was fine, but
Yeah.
there was a lot of damage to his house by the debris
Yeah.
that's coming and all, and they say like just like there's a few blocks from his way, their neighbors, the neighborhood in that they were like decimated, and
Wow.
yeah, and like I just urge people look where Ottawa on the map is. It's
Yeah.
nowhere near the oceans that a
Yeah.
cyclone should reach it, but it happened internally. And I
Yeah.
don't and I cannot tell people like I don't tell them like it happens. I don't know how to make you believe more that there's something wrong with the
Yeah.
environment, but it happened, and you can read the news about it. You can see the images about those houses. It was a big disaster.
I know.
Uh, yeah, and that leads me to our next topic is that we have like the past couple of years we've seen a lot of disasters like since 2000 and let's say 14 or 15 until now we've seen a lot of environmental disasters that are connected to the climate change, but this year like with COVID-19 and the crisis and all, I mean, like it's really bad timing maybe for each other, but we notice that it's a good time for the nature. Nature is
Yes.
blooming again. I go and walk sometimes, and I hear the birds chirping all around.
Yeah.
The nature is the air is. I have a very sensitive nose, by the way.
Yeah.
I can smell those petroleum
Yeah.
products, the burning of the petroleum products from the cars and all of this thing, even late at night because it's still
Yeah.
in the air.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now I go out and I told you I'm afraid to get used to that because I know that at some point we'll get back to normal or whatever it's going to be, but
Yeah.
I am really now going out and then smelling that clean air,
Yeah.
and we see wild, and I for the first time in years I saw wild rabbits on the streets or on the sidewalks, birds everywhere, and you see the animals, the birds are now going into the parking lots while sometimes when I walk to buy something, or sometimes I sit down to enjoy, and the birds are like around. Now it became like, it's become like their natural habitat. They're not afraid of us anymore. And
Yeah.
and a lot of news, like in China, I mean, like just to tell people in Shanghai, wearing those masks is not new to them for the past few years because the air quality there is really,
Hmm.
really bad because of the
Hmm.
industries and all of these things happening. So
Yeah.
that was not new to them to wear masks. But
Hmm.
for the first time in years, maybe in decades, the air quality has improved only with it from by the first month or the second month of this pandemic started in China, which was the first place.
Yeah.
The air quality became 20% better.
Yeah.
Wait,
Yes.
like that tells something, you
Yes.
know. And
Yes.
I know that you're doing a lot of walks recently, and you're taking a lot of photos, and you've noticed all of that, right?
I have, the one thing that has been my saving grace, and I'll go a little bit funny here for a few minutes. Is I did this photo walk with Hisham last year. There's a meetup group in Toronto called Photo Walk, and they do basically a couple of big events of the year. And I was like, they do photo walks, so I did one. Then I did one without Hisham. It was an Indian event, and Hisham was in Mississauga. I think he was busy that day. So these last 9 weeks, I've taken pictures of everything: squirrels, cats, birds, flowers. Um, and I can tell you, I mean, downtown Toronto is a very busy area, a lot of construction. So three things I've noticed. First is dust. We have a lot of construction in our neighborhood here. There's a big project called the Mirvish Project happening. It is bad, ladies and gentlemen. I mean, dust, no dust whatsoever because they stopped there. They're not working as much. The air. I don't consider myself having sensitive smell, but I am cognizant of it, and I can smell the because I'm close to the lake, about half an hour away from the lake. I can smell it. It feels cleaner. It smells cleaner. And third is the trees and the flowers. They've blossomed. And I've taken some pictures of some roses today, like the inside of a rose. I'll post later on. So I think these are all little factors that have helped. And I just saw a few weeks ago they're saying that the ozone layer, the Earth's ozone layer, is actually getting is actually
Thickening up. Thickening.
it's thickening up and cleaning because there's less emissions, there's less cars. So yes, COVID is a very, very serious situation, and many people have died, and I totally understand that. But some of the indirect things that have happened is our environment has begun to reset itself. I'm not sure if that's a good enough word to use, but have reset itself. So that is a small good thing, but maybe we should be more conscious of now maybe not allowing that many people are not going to be telecommuting to work. Potentially, they're discussing that telecommuting, now people will be working from home rather than going to the office. That's one thing discussed in some major corporations. So this has been an unfortunate situation that's happened, a very dire situation, but indirectly, maybe the earth and the environment has reset itself a little bit. So I've noticed it because I've been out and about in my neighborhood a little bit and just cycling sort of outside my neighborhood last week or so. So that's a good thing happening, and I think we should be a little proud of it. So I'll throw it back to you, Hisham.
Yeah, and I always tell people that maybe the whole thing about COVID-19 is the nature is putting itself in a self-defense mode. Because viruses are part of the nature, by the way. So and we've already have a lot of pandemics in 1918, where we've had then also the Black Death, which is which happened which killed like 2/3 of Europe, I believe, or something like that. Nature comes with things like that every now and then, and I think it's kind of a self-defense mode for nature to say, like, you know what, here I am, I'm the boss, for that matter, and and again, as
very
you
well
said,
yeah.
As you said, no one wanted this thing to happen, and the death toll is over, while we are recording this, is over 300,000 worldwide. We have, like, I believe a couple of thousands here in Canada, and most of them are from the elderly people, who our grandparents, people we love and we cherish, and we don't want them dead. And there are also people who are children, and this pandemic killed people from all, and not just to tell to the people who got hurt by even getting the disease itself, or the back effect, like mental health. There's a lot of problems that happened. No one wanted that, but the least that we can do, because we didn't have a control of it, the least we can do is lessons learned. And one of the lessons that we learned, there's a lesson learned. We have like a couple of, I think now we have agreed that we'll have a couple of episodes about life post COVID-19. But I think within the topic of climate change, I think there's a lot of lessons learned for nature. Let's not just talk about it in climate change, so people get sensitive. For our nature, we know that the nature has been breathing out much better The air quality has been better. There are people in Europe seeing fish, rare types of fish coming back to the canals where they were. I mean, like in Italy, where they used to tourists going up with those boats and all. Now, because it's all stopped, they're seeing fish coming out. There's the wild animals here in Canada. I mean, have you seen the video that the eels and all, they're on because we have like Canada is a big country and we have like very huge highways between provinces and they were carved, literally between mountains and nature. And now on the streets, you see all those wild animals. Have you seen those images or videos, by the way?
No.
Oh, it's amazing. It's amazing. You see them right in the streets. One actually, a Canadian filmmaker who wanted to do something about that, and he was filming on a highway, and he saw them all, and they were walking around. It's like they're claiming back their spaces.
The one with the lions in the middle of the street. There was one of those the ones lions in the middle of the street. There was
Yeah,
one.
they
The
were.
African lion safari. Oh, there's a picture of the African lion safari,
Yeah.
where the lions were one of the zookeeper. I remember this. The zookeeper's looking through, and they're all in the middle of the street, just lying down.
I know, but
Okay.
here in Canada we
I
have.
saw one image. I saw one image.
Yeah, here in Canada we've seen eels, foxes,
Yeah.
a lot of
Yes, foxes. Yes.
yeah, my friend here
Foxes.
in Mississauga, one of my friends, she says she was having a walk that other day and she saw a coyote.
Yeah. There's been coyotes on the east side of the city in Ashbridges
Yes.
Bay, and they put fences up. It was in the news here. So
Yeah,
stay away from coyotes, but
yeah,
yes, be careful.
but that tells us something that nature is here and we have done the damage. And when we stopped, I mean, like we didn't stop everything. There are still a lot of industries that are going. It's just we reduced a lot of it, partially reduced a lot of it, and this small thing of the small partial reduction has made the nature, like breathe again, for that matter. So can you imagine if we went into cleaner energy or a lot of other actions, how the life is going to change and how Earth is going to be, I don't know, maybe the same place that we've had for centuries. Now that's also speaking of emissions and what we have done, that was past, and we have to move to the future, which is our next topic. Is what can we do to prevent the worsening of climate change? I mean, like simple actions could make some difference. And I'm gonna let you share the story about you getting to use reusable straws when you saw me doing it for like about a year and you were denying and suddenly you started using it. So
Okay.
yeah.
All right. So okay, this comes a little bit of the funny part because people are complaining we're too serious. So this is a little funny part. So Hisham, I live in downtown Toronto, and Hisham is basically in the city most of the time, working or going to events. So he has this bag with him, and this bag has, his work stuff, his camera.
Actually, it's my house. It's my everything in my house.
It's his house,
except for the bed where I come here and
okay.
sleep.
Too TMI.
Okay.
Okay.
I just letting people the history of what's happening.
So we're at the Mars. I think it was at Mars. There's a thing called the Mars Center here in Toronto, and we're downstairs, and there's a Tim Hortons there because I'm at Tim Hortons. And he opens this thing, opens up, and he's like prouder than a 4-year-old during Christmas. Like I'm telling you, he was so excited. And he has this straw, he has a thing, and he's like, look, he's like, look at this. And I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. You have a straw with you. Like, and of course I got the third degree, straws are gonna be eliminated, this and that. So where is my little? Okay, so I got something I'm going to show people. So just reminds me, thank God. So so then a few months later, we meet up again, and he gives me a straw, a metal straw. I said, "Who's this for?" And he says, "It's for you." I'm like, "Really? You want me to carry this thing around with me?" Yes. I took the straw. Like a week later, I was out with a friend, and I pulled out the straw. And I put it in my drink. And this friend, his name is Joe. Joe's known me a long time, and literally for about maybe a minute, he just looked at me kind of funny, and he says, "What are you doing?" I said, "This is my reusable straw." And he looked at me perplexed and said, "Jim, I've known you a long time. Who the hell gave you a straw?" I said, a mutual friend, Hisham." I go, "What do you mean?" I told him he has this little thing. So I'm going to show you something. So in March, I ran into a gentleman. He created a product. It's called the fork and knife. Now, this is an indirect plug, but it's so perfect for this show. Hisham didn't know I was going to do this, but I'm going to do it anyways. So Hisham, well, it's pertinent. So this gentleman created a product where it's a reusable fork and knife called the fork and knife. At the end of March, I was supposed to do an event called the Green Living Show here in Toronto. And it's about green living. So I shot an infomercial with Hisham. He helped me to do this infomercial. So it's a credit card thing. It opens up. One's a knife, right? You put it back in. I don't know if I can do this really quickly. And then the other one is a fork and knife. And so I was totally blown away. I was excited about doing this, and it goes back in. Let's see if I can put it back in. It's a little tricky. This product was created, so it goes like this, and it goes back in like this. And it goes back in the holder. So I'll do it later. So the premise of why this is people who are out there on mountains, who are eating, and they want to be consciously respectful of the world. He created this product. And then COVID happened, and then I didn't do the infomercial in the event. But I was blown away by this is because we've come to the point where we're out and about. I do a lot of movies here in Toronto, and we have, they give us forks and knives. Well, I'm going to bring, this with me. So
You mean plastic forks and knives?
Yeah, plastic forks and knives, and I'll bring this with me. But I've seen people bring their own forks on the movie sets. So the premise is this is on a personal note is I got rid of my car in 2016. It was 10 years old. I love my car. It was a Honda Civic. God bless it. But I started taking my bike, subway, walking. I live in downtown Toronto at this time. So yes, I have most of my family is here. I have my brother living just outside the city. But it was just a personal decision. And so far, it hasn't affected anything. I've gotten jobs all over Toronto. I love to cycle, love to walk and all that. So my carbon footprint has, I've helped a little bit. Now I know it's just one person, but at the end of the day, we are the best examples we can for our own selves. And I felt that this is an important topic that we can make that little bit of impact is a start.
Yeah.
To make an impact. Can you go to a climate change protest? You're more than welcome to do one. Can you go to a meetup to discuss climate change initiatives? Yes. Could you read books on it to better inform yourself? Yes. So there's little things you can do to make an impact for you and your family. A viewer who I was just speaking to before we came on, he said to me, "Jim, well, listen, now we recycle. We take our vegetables and they take them separately. Years ago, we had in Toronto composters. Put it in our backyard, fill the composter, shut it. I had a composter here. I was so proud of it. Some people still kept their composters. They love their composters. So the cities here in Toronto, they've made an effort. They have yard waste pickup. We didn't have yard waste pickup 5-6 years ago. So all these little things, ladies and gentlemen, they add up. And if everyone does them, we'll do that. So the last thing I'd say about this topic is that this podcast is not about giving the answers. Absolutely not. What we're trying to do is share some information, share some resources, share some stories. Listen, COVID is a serious thing, and many people have lost their lives. So we're not saying, okay, the environment is getting better. It has, but this is something that we want to continue doing. So that is why we decided to do this topic now rather than down the road. So I hope that. So I'll throw it back to you, Hisham. That's all for me.
The thing you said about when I brought you this this straw and you started using it and your friend, because it's not just you. I last Christmas I have like a lot of packages for for like the reusable straws, like rainbow colors. And I was giving it as Christmas gifts to my friends, and
Yeah.
a lot of them started using it. You know, they loved the idea, and they were like colorful and nice and everything. And I'm sure they would affect other people. So it's the ripple effect that you say that I'm insignificant. That is not true, because whatever you do, you influence other people, and that's
Back
the
in
ripple
there.
effect. Yeah, and that's a ripple effect that you can do on people, and they could follow you. What I wanted to also talk about is not just the role of persons who are doing this. There are an army of tech people. I'm saying that because I've been a part of doing projects like
Hmm.
that for technology, like doing AI solutions
Hmm.
to study and fight climate change. That to study what's going on, how what can we do, prediction models, AI. And there's now also the quantum computing, which is one of the reasons why we call our podcast quantumly leaping, because we are living now in the age of quantum computing and the age of quantum technology, which is going to be quantum technology is helping us study this, because it's based on real life. It's not just like the classic computing 0 and 1. So there are a lot of studies around, a lot of technology, a lot of people are helping. I have a bunch of people that I know personally, or some of them virtually, who are in tech, and they're volunteering their time to help with with implementing solutions on that. You
Yeah.
remember the ones on the CIX, those guys we interviewed who are in
Yes.
Vancouver, and they were
Yes.
giving that AI to see to tell you can put something in front of a camera, and it will tell you it's recyclable or not,
Oh,
and
yes.
how do you make it recyclable?
That's
Like if
right.
you have a bottle of water, a plastic bottle, and
Yes.
it still have water in it, it's telling you it's not recyclable. You should remove water out of it. And that's a very innovative solution. And here in
Yes.
Canada, those two, I love those two guys, two young guys from Vancouver who's done this in AI, and it could help people from and initiatives are all around the country for that.
Yeah.
So AI and quantum computing is definitely helping us. There's a lot of people who are doing that. If you are into this field, go to this or never even to this field, because you don't have to be a technologist to be into this one. We need also people who have knowledge about the environment or anything. We need people in marketing to start marketing those solutions out to people. Everybody, go to those events, technical or not, participate, know, and help spread the awareness for that matter. And that brings me to the closing of this. I hope that people, with the ending of this episode, I hope that people understand that we're not standing by any side of the effect, sorry, of the issue of this issue here. That says we're not saying that we stand up with those guys, or we stand up with facts. We also have our we I was a skeptic myself from day one, and I'm still skeptic, not about the climate change maybe now, but about things that might be said on both sides. Like sometimes there's exaggeration, you know, on the believer side or the deniers. But I look into both sides, and I know that you do as well. And here, as you said earlier, we're not here in this podcast to provide answers. We are way smaller than that, I believe, and it's the answers is not by two people who are doing a podcast. The answer is a global
Yeah.
response, globally people coming together, and awareness is a very, 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 very important thing. And what I would tell to people, last thing I would say is like, read and be informed. Look at both sides equally. Don't live in an informational silo where you just listen to what you think is right. Listen to the other side. I still remember the days in the 80s and 90s where people coming and debating both sides, and even if they didn't get convinced, they were actually considering the other side and listening to them without you see those videos on XYZ destroys whoever it is, and that where they put destroys in capitals. And like, this word was not used in our days. I mean, like in the 80s and 90s, it is not a good thing. Negotiations, dialogues is what we want. Go into dialogues. Don't go there because you want to destroy someone. Go because you want to show your opinion and listen to theirs. And with that, I will leave the last word to you, Jim.
Yeah, well, I hope everybody enjoyed this special impact podcast. And like I said, we're just two guys here sharing information. And I think what I just like to reiterate, Sham, is participate. That's not going to cost you anything. Listen, I read two books. Cool It by Bjorn Lombard and Environmental Challenges and Opportunities, Local Global Perspectives of Canadian Issues by Kristen D. Gore and Peter Stewart. Okay, you can find these in the library. That's information. I went to a climate strike event. I went. It was interesting. It was weird, but I feel that I'm making an impact now. And if it's a small impact, at least it's an impact. So with that, I appreciate everybody listening. And I'm Jim.
And I'm Hisham, and we see you in next episode.
Thanks a lot.
Thank
Bye
you.
bye.
Have a good day.